Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at the many facets of work that is happening at the Department of Children and Families, between our staff, the families we serve, and our community partners. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics we bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help us dispel the myths and misconceptions that can often be barriers to our work. Join us as we open our doors and invite you to have a seat at our table. Kelly, thank you so much for being on Doors to Hope and Healing. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Sure, thank you.
Known you for a very long time in many different capacities of work that you've done. So before we get talking about really why you're here and visiting with us today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. We were talking briefly before, and I grew up on a farm. I lost my dad when I was 9. So my mother, my grandmother, my great aunt, and my brother, we were a family. And my aunt was very into cows. She worked for Uniroyal, which was a huge sneaker company in Naugatuck, Connecticut, and their signature cow was a polled Hereford. So she got me into the animals. I showed at the Big E, the Eastern States, when I was a kid, and grew up in the house that I'm living in now. So I'm raising my family in the house that I was born in. Had a good life, kind of understood at a young age that you don't need like the mom and dad and the white picket fence and the dog to be happy. You just need people to care about you. So my great aunt Millie was like a huge role model in my life. Worked hard every day. And so I just had the great kid experience. And growing up, of course, most kids don't know what they want to do. I had no clue what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to help people, especially children. So decided to go to school and pursue my degree to be able to help as many as I could.
And you have a family of your own?
I do have a family of my own. My husband and I have 5 children. Timmy is 37, Adam is 35, Brady's 32, Patrick's 31, she just turned 30. I have 2 grandsons. Brigham is 9 months and Gannon is 18 months. And my youngest daughter, Shay, is having another boy probably in 3 weeks.
Wow.
His name is Ford Kelly.
I love that.
So he'll be with us in another couple of weeks. So we'll have 3 grandsons under 2.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty hectic.
It's a whole new way of living life, right?
It's
the
pretty
love of
hectic.
Grandchild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you know that because of your closeness with your grandmother and,
Yes,
and that
absolutely.
important role. So you went to school and you majored in social work, and then you went and you started your career at Waterbury Youth Services. I
did. That was my first job out of college. At that time, Waterbury Youth was part of the YMCA. So Waterbury Youth had a office on the 2nd floor, and the president of the Y knew my mom, and they were looking for a part-time person for youth services, so he got me an interview, which it's kind of like who you know, and I mean, it's real tough out there in the world, and so I got an interview. I feel as I did prove myself. I started part-time, worked my way up, became the director in the early 80s. We moved to a brand new building, built the agency from probably when I started, it was about $120,000, and then we bought a building on Prospect Street, and I left the agency, leaving it with a budget of about $2.7 million.
Wow, wow. Talk about growth. And so talk a little bit about, I remember you from your youth services days because I worked in Waterbury. Tell our viewers what type of child passed through the doors at Waterbury Youth Services.
We've tried to, one of the mandates of Youth Service Bureau is to meet the needs of your community. So I was president of CYSA, Connecticut Youth Service Association, a couple of times here and there. We work with legislators, but people have to understand that their communities are totally different. So Youth Service Bureaus kind of really look into what your city or your town needs and try to meet those needs for the kids. So in Waterbury, it's a tough town. There's a lot of kids that are struggling. We did truancy prevention programs because the truancy rate in Waterbury is extremely high. We did juvenile justice programs for kids getting involved with law enforcement. We did parenting programs, mentoring programs. We had a safe home for DCF kids to give them a little time for DCF staff to kind of figure out where they were going to go and what they were going to do. And then at one point, it was back in the mid-90s, the welfare reform was being enacted. So people that were on welfare were only going to get 21 months of income, and then their money would stop. So I hired someone that was from that culture. It was mostly Hispanic at the time. And we had a meeting in the Hispanic neighborhood, and we thought we'd get like 50 people to come. We had 6 women.
Wow.
And my facilitator, which grew up on welfare and worked her way up and bought her own home and everything, met with these women and said, you know, what can you do? And they said, well, we have no formalized education. We really have no job skills, but we can babysit. So we all went back, we put our heads together, and we became the largest Hispanic daycare association in the state of Connecticut. Received all kinds of awards across the state and even further. But we would get questions at times, especially myself. People would say, why are you getting into the welfare reform? You're a youth serving agency. Well, if you don't look holistically at what's going on with these families, you're not going to make a change. I mean, if we had a truancy prevention program and we only worked with that child that wasn't going to school, he still has to go home, or she has to go home to that environment. So if you're not working as a whole with these families, and I can say this, and I've never met someone that didn't want to be a good parent. I mean, they all want to be good parents. They don't know how. You know, you're not taught you don't know what you're not taught. And so we focused on the parents, we focused on the siblings, we focused on the identified youth, but we made it a holistic approach. And we did some great work and changed a lot of lives.
Yeah, it's all about the whole family, you know,
It is.
and strengthening the whole family.
You know, when I first started, I was right out of college. I was in my early 20s, and a lot of my young men that I were working with would end up in the prison system. And the minute they got out, they'd end up in the court system to get signed out, and they would end up over at my place with me. And I'd say, well, you know, what did we do wrong? What did I do wrong? What did the school system do wrong? Like, what failed you? Because I tried so hard with these kids, you know, and 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, the answer would be we had to go back home. So if you don't change that life of what they're into, then you're not going to change that person.
Right. It's
and
working
people
with that
want to
family.
be good people. Honestly, I can say that I've never met a parent that said, I want to grow up and be a terrible parent.
No,
They
no.
just don't know how to be a good parent.
And they need those tools.
They
and those
do, and they need the
resources.
support. I mean, you know, we're around the same age, but I mean, you had support back then. You know, I mean, you had neighbors or grandmothers or aunts or something, and you know, the way that life has changed, there's not, like, a lot of people don't even know who their neighbors are.
I know.
You know,
Really
and it's no
living in
one's fault.
silos.
It's just that it's a different life. People are guarded and stay to themselves, and they're too busy.
Yeah, well, you did wonderful work, and you left an
appreciate that.
incredible legacy at Waterbury Youth Services. And then you started a business called Farm on Wheels. Now, did you do Farm on Wheels when you were still at Waterbury Youth Services?
I started Farm on Wheels when my oldest son, Tim, was 5.
Oh, okay.
So like 32 years ago. We live in Prospect, Connecticut, so I was on the field day committee. And the field day is like games for the kids and balloon toss and all that. And I said, well, why don't we bring some animals? And I only had a few at the time, so Prospect to me is like a country town. So I brought some lambs and goats. We only, like I said, maybe a handful of animals, and the kids did not know the difference between a goat and a lamb.
Because they hadn't been exposed.
They haven't
to
been
that.
exposed. So, you know, my head never stops. Like, I'm constantly thinking of what I can do, be creative, you know, how to make an honest buck and the whole thing. And so I went home and I said to my family, I said, I want to start a program where I'm going to go to convalescent homes and nursery schools and fairs and different things. And so my husband looked at me, he said, you're nuts. And he built me a fence. I got insurance. We had the horse trailer. We had the animals. Advertised in the Waterbury paper, and the first job we got was the Special Olympics.
Oh.
So we did that 32 years ago, and as of today, we cannot keep up with it.
Wow.
And my great nephews, Jace is 18, just graduated high school, doesn't have a clue what he wants to do. He knows school's not for him at this point. And then Cole is 17, his brother, he'll graduate next year. So I bought them a cargo van, and it says Farm on Wheels on the side, so it's their business now.
Oh, how cool
So
is
they're
that?
on the road like every day as young men developing their own business.
And so you gave them that business?
I gave it to them to see how it goes for the summer. I told Jace, the one that just graduated high school, I said, do it for the summer. You know, it's pretty cool at 18 owning your own business, so we'll see how it goes. So, I mean, he's doing well. They're we do a lot of like emotional support programs in the schools, and they're young boys that have a lot of compassion. So they do very well with, especially the young kids in the schools, like the 3rd, 4th, 5th graders. They just think these guys are like idols. You know, they see these young guys walking in and so they're like driven to them, and, you know, they talk, and a lot of good stuff happens because of it.
Well, and I mean, I'm an avid animal lover, and I think that we both can agree that animals, you know, they just help people who are struggling immensely.
And the animals know too, which is unbelievable. I mean, you know, like when I do convalescent homes and things, we lost everything, so we're back to start with the new animals, but I just got a miniature donkey, and he has like the sense that, like, when we do the convalescent homes, he knows who's struggling. Wow. So he'll go over and he'll like put his head like in their lap. Like, they get it. It's not only dogs that get it, like all these animals do understand. They do. They do.
And what is, you know, in your experience of going to the convalescent home, I know that we're going to be talking about children in a few minutes, but what effect have you seen on the
convalescent homes are probably the most heartfelt programs that we do, because most of the time the older gentlemen, they do it during like their arts and crafts type period, and most of the elderly gentlemen don't want to go and make a sweater or paint a picture or something like that. So they're recluse, like they don't really do a lot. And then when we started doing the farm, we do a lot of repeats, like year after year after year. And once, like, the guys are out there an hour before we come, in their chairs, just waiting for us. They watch us set up, they talk to us during it, they wait until we're all packed up until we go. And then the ones that we've been doing year after year, there's a relationship that's built with them. You know,
they look forward to you coming.
And you know, we both say, like, God willing, we'll see you next year. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'll be here, if they'll be here, but you know, so they get a lot out of it. They truly get a lot out of it. I mean, the women love it too. I mean, because we're compassionate, we have a different. But these guys, I mean, they'll be like, I don't know, 250-pound guy, you know, squeezing a little rabbit because it's just so nice to them. So they are powerful.
And the unconditional love that you receive, and no judgment from an animal. I think there was a story on the news the other night where a woman was dying of cancer and she wanted to see her horse, and it was just that bonding, and the animal understood, and she went in peace. Animals do. So tell us about Kelly's Kids. Let's transition into, you know, what made you create this Kelly Kids place for kids to go to?
Well, we live in Prospect, so we have about probably 12 acres altogether. My son Adam kind of was clearing the land out before this was even a concept in my head. And we talked briefly about me being at Waterbury Youth Services, so I was there for 35 years. In July of 2014, I took my mom to the doctor at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I was told that she had terminal cancer. At 5 o'clock, my board said they needed to meet with me. So I never took time off, never. And that was my own fault. No one ever asked me to do that. I mean, we were talking briefly before. I would take like the kids from the safe home to church. I would have them out to the house raking leaves, jumping in leaves, cooking s'mores. I mean, that's just what I wanted to do. So I never took vacation. I didn't take sick days. And my board said, you need to meet with us at 5. I said, well, I don't know if I can because I have to take my mom to the doctor. And they said, well, you need to. So we met, and at that time, after 35 years, I was told that my services were no longer needed. So you just learned that your mother's passing. So you put things into perspective. But then the person in you, like, you know, starts boiling and stuff. And I said, can you tell me why? And they said, I'll never forget they said, we want someone to start running this agency with their head and not their heart. And I said, $2.7 million, $2.8 million later, I think I had a little bit of my head in there. But whatever it is, it is. So I go home, and my mom passed that September, so she was very ill. And I don't know if I can say this word on camera, but she was an Irish bitch. in a good sense.
It can bloop you out.
Yeah, a very good sense, no nonsense, like this is life, you deal with it. So I go home and I said, Mom, they're not going to sign my contract. She goes, they don't want you. She said, get out of there. They don't want you. I said, well, I have no choice, but she said, but you never stay anywhere that nobody wants you. So I kind of reflected a little bit, and like I said, she passed in September, and I said, I cannot go back to work and have a boss. I'll get a 22-year-old kid that's telling me what to do, and I said, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's hard to transition.
So because of the Farm on Wheels, my love for kids, my love for the elderly, the love for special needs, I just said, I'm going to open my own business. So we decided to build a barn. We built it, all of us, the family, friends, from the ground up. It all started because I was doing Farm on Wheels in a school in Plainville, and one of the little girls, her name was Sarah, she had a speech impediment. She couldn't say her R's, and I couldn't either until I was like 11 years old. So I was bullied in school, and I was working with her, and I said, listen, I said, it's not you, it's them. Like, you know, you have to get enough backbone to say this isn't, and it's going to be hard, but you have to. So, you know, kid came out of her shell, started doing really well. The mother called me. She said, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. She said, you know, she's so confident in herself right now. And I said, you're never going to stop the bullies. It's not going to happen. You're going to give your kid enough confidence to be able to deal with it. So she said, what are you trying to do out there? And that's when Kelly's Kids was in my head, the concept. So she was the VP of Black & Decker. And she said, what do you need? So we put down what we needed, and they gave us a huge, generous gift to get off the ground.
Wow.
And from that, we, like Home Depot stepped up, Lowe's. So we built a 30 by 80 barn. It's not a barn, it's more like a castle for the kids. We're adding on right now because we're, you know, getting, the need is much more than it was in the past, which is sad.
And who was, when you first started Kelly's Kids, who was your audience? Who were the children that were coming?
DCF.
It was all DCF kids were coming to, and it was an after-school program?
It was an after-school program, and I was just telling the kids the other day, the ones that are there now for camp, when I started, I had one kid, and we worked out of my basement. And then we just continued to build and build and build, and you know, Jackie, I mean, my love is so there for them. Like, it's not a job for me; it's a passion, you know. And I just want to help them so much. But we at Kelly's Kids probably do get not the most, but very damaged emotional kids in the state.
So kids that have faced, you know, unspeakable trauma,
and kids that have tried traditional after-school programs, and just the structure and what goes along with it. It's just hard. So, you know, my grandmother had said to me 20 years ago, and this was 20 years, she said, you know what's wrong with kids today? I said, what, Nan? She said, they have no purpose, Kelly. She said, you know, I came from a family of 13. I had to get the water. My sister had to milk the cow. My brother had to feed the horse. She said, kids today, and that was 20 years ago, so times that by 20 more years, which is true. So the way I designed Kelly's Kids is that these kids are needed. So we focus on needing them. And sometimes, like now it's been really hot, so the kid that has to give the pig water 7-8 times a day, by, you know, third time, he's like, it's too hot. I said, who's going to give the pig water? You want to drink, you go to the fridge. What you need to do this. This is what you, and once they get that, that they are needed, their whole concept of who they are changes. It really, really does.
Do you have a story, you know, any child, as you're sharing all this, that resonates in your mind of impact that over the years that you've had Kelly's Kids, you know, one particular child or a story that you can share?
I have a ton of them.
Yes.
We had the massive fire.
Yes.
We lost the barn and 60 animals, and that was on a Friday night. And then I got a call from DCF on Monday and said, are you open today? And I said, yes. And they said, well, how are you going to explain this to the kids? Because I think we had 6 teenage boys at that particular time. And I said, we're going to sit down as a family, and I'm going to explain to them that what happened.
And if I could stop you there for a second. So explain to our viewers, for anyone who may not be aware, you had a tragedy on that Friday night, and you had a fire on your property, and you lost
60 animals, all my animals.
And it was devastating for you. So now these kids that had been there probably on Friday morning, Friday afternoon, are now home and they're coming back to see you on Monday.
On Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're coming on Monday, and I got a call from someone at DCF and said, well, I want to know how you're going to explain it to them. And I said, we're going to sit down as a family at the table. Some knew, some didn't. So we sat down and I said, we lost the barn. So this 14-year-old looked at me and said, but the animals are okay, right? And I said, no. So I walked them over to the remains of the foundation, and I said, you know, we did everything we could. I said, this is a part of life. It's not easy. I said, but, you know, it was an accident. This is what happens, and we have to just move on. Well, Jackie, that was probably the toughest and the best moment I've had with these kids, because they started crying. And as you know, DCF kids usually don't cry. Like, their emotion is really stuck in there somewhere, that I have to be strong, I can't show emotion, I'm not weak. You know, I'm going to 16, 26 different foster homes by the time, you know, with not blaming anybody, it's just what life is all about, and you don't see emotion. So when they cried, it was they opened up. And so we went back, and they stood there for a while, and then we went back and we sat down again. And I said, I just have to say one thing to you guys. I said, I'm so proud of you. I said, that's empathy. Empathy means that you still have feeling in your heart. I said, and to cry is fine. You need to cry. I said, I've been crying for a whole weekend. I said, but I'm so proud of you, so don't bottle it up. When something happens, you need to talk to somebody about it. So this one little, you think he was about 12, he goes, I feel so bad, Kelly. And I said, I know, honey, but that's what you're supposed to feel. That is so normal. Like, if you said, doesn't affect me, then that's a problem.
That's concerning.
And then they all looked at me and they said, we feel so bad for you. So it's there. You know, that feeling in them is there. It's just you have to work really hard to bring it out, because they're just so scared that if they, you know, show emotion, or that people are going to think they're weak, and then they're going to be taken advantage of.
And
so
they're vulnerable. You know,
they are
that
vulnerable.
Weakness shows vulnerability.
So we ended on a great note. I said, you know, you're all getting a hammer, and I said, and you know, we're all going to rebuild together. And so they've been great about it. I mean, we've restocked. We have other animals and stuff, and they'll still ask some questions, but they're pretty good with it.
So tell me about the rebuild. I know we're getting ready to end the show soon, and I want to talk quickly too about our sibling connection camp that's coming up. But so where are you at with the rebuild?
The rebuild, Kelly's kids, we were in the midst of putting in a septic, because we still have outhouses. So that was before the fire. So we want to finish one thing at a time, because if you put too many spoons in, then you're not going to have anything. So actually, we're getting a building out of Pennsylvania. So they're coming up hopefully next week. They come up and they build the whole thing for you. They rent a hotel room for 3 days, and in 3 days you have a barn.
Wow.
So, but then one of my sons, Patrick, is doing the excavating. So it's a lot of family work that we're trying to get together. It's a slow process.
And you have more animals?
We do have more animals. We have probably, if it was up to me, we'd have more, but my kids are like, come on, don't go there again. So we have a miniature cow, miniature donkey, baby doll lambs, goats, ponies, ducks, rabbits. We're getting back to getting to where we are.
Well, your story is tragic, and yet there's so many beautiful elements to what's come out of this, from the community support and this lesson, this painful lesson that these children who are involved with you have learned.
I know, and even with one of the kids that was a DCF kid back when she was 14, now she's 34, she started a GoFundMe page.
Oh, wow.
And she kind of put herself out there, because no one knew she was in foster care. She owns her own therapy business now. She's extremely successful. Wow. But she wanted to do this. And the support that came was, and I mean this, that I didn't know people liked me that much. I really did.
See, and they do. You're loved.
But it
You're
was like people
loved.
you didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know, that would just come out of. But when you put animals and kids together, it's like a.
It's a formula.
Yeah.
It's an amazing formula
Yeah.
that works together.
Yeah.
So as we close today, I know that we have a big day
do.
coming up together on August 4th. You are welcoming foster siblings, so kids that are in foster care, either placed separately or together, or even we have some families that are coming that had an open case, and we're inviting them back as a sibling group because we know that families are stressed, and to lift a barrier and to create some fun for the kids to be together safely away from their parents, to have this wonderful day.
Yeah.
So tell us just quickly what we have planned for that day where the siblings are going to be spending the day on the farm.
They're going to get there probably about 9 o'clock. We want to do an cookout breakfast, like eggs on the fire outside and things like that. Kind of more of the farm thing. We have a greenhouse that they'll be working in. We have a brook that goes through the property. All the animals, we're getting a DJ. We're having the state police come in with the dogs, the fire trucks. But we're really a photographer, face painting, but we want to concentrate on them building their relationships. So we want them to be able to give them as much to take home as we can. Maybe a book of pictures of them and their siblings. You know, these kids, they don't get to see their siblings, and I think, you know, I know they used to say that it used to be done on a weekly basis, which is great, but I think one day is going to make a difference with a lot of them.
It is, and you know, having been the lead on the Siblings Connection Camp for many years now, to bear witness to those relationships and the healing that happens with them just being together for even just one day. So I thank you so much for opening your farm.
We're looking forward to it. So we're going to have, they'll probably leave at 6, so we got a catered lunch for them, and then we'll do hot dogs and hamburgers, fire at the end, we'll cook out with s'mores and things like that. So
it's going to be no doubt it's going to be a memorable day for them.
We'll come through.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're at that place where you're rebuilding and bringing this new light and energy to these kids. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching Doors to Hope and Healing. And now stay tuned for a video, a message from one of our kids, and thank you for watching.
Foster parents that try and stay away from youth with run-ins with the law, I believe need to see that those youth are in more need of someone to talk to, of someone to listen, of someone to be there because of the situation that they are in.
Don't restrict them just because you think of their history. You know, think that they would want to, you know, feel like they're a part of the family.
It's important to remember that no matter what you read on a piece of paper, it doesn't mean that's who's in the inside. By you judging what's on that paper, you're only causing more harm to the child. Let that child show you who they are, not what a piece of paper says about them.
Don't treat them based on their past.
Always let them know that no matter what happens here, you're coming home. I love you. You're great. You're a great individual. Your actions do not define you. You can always change them. You can change your future because of that.
Every foster youth has a history behind them. We all have our own stories, you know, but our stories do not define who we are. You know, it really matters what we do with our story.
Yes, it gives you an understanding of what they may have gone through, but that doesn't mean that's who they are.
They deserve the opportunity to turn their lives around.
When you're fostering a kid, you're fostering them. You want to bring them up, so you have to get to their level and help them grow.
And that really solidifies what we're going to become. And foster parents can help us by understanding that, yes, we have a long history, but meet me where I'm at right now.
I believe that foster children should get a second chance.
Foster parents can be that second chance.